All right, we're going. Let's rock and roll.
All
Nice.
right. Starting out strong.
Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to show this just to kick things off. Best friend Ted, fellow entrepreneur, talking today. And a lot of our conversations going to be a bit about AI, technology, entrepreneurship. That'll be the theme of our talks for the most part, just a casual conversation. And this was something that I saw on Twitter this week. And so basically, this is the number of workers needed at an S&P 500 company to generate $1 million in revenue. And I thought that this was so true and really striking. I mean, basically, we see that smaller and smaller companies can produce larger and larger amounts of value in the marketplace. And so, this it made me think of Instagram because I think they had an insanely small team when they IPO'd. But you're seeing so much of this, and particularly now, playing around with Chat GPT, myself being a founder and operating, I feel like now is the best time ever to be able to do almost everything as a small team. Like, really, I can do coding, editing, marketing, you name it. And all of these tools just make me way more effective. So, yeah.
100%. I think a few things are affecting this. One being the nature of business, as we've kind of gone from, I think this starts at maybe 1980, where technology was still super elementary. And there was like a lot of physical products, physical processes. So if you're building things physically in the physical world, maybe you have delivery guys, all of these things, then obviously you need a ton more. So just the nature of these higher level businesses like WhatsApp with, I think, 16 employees, or 14 employees selling for 16 billion, something along those lines. It's because their product is highly scalable or has a massive reach, and there's no physical creation. There's no delivery other than directly through a phone. So I think that's one. Obviously, systems and automations, which AI is going to play into, is a huge part of this. But another thing that I'm curious of if this is taking into consideration is freelance workers, because we've seen a big change from employees to contractors. So do you think this graph is accounting for, this is only employees, but it might not be reflective of people that are working on certain companies? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would assume that they're probably not factoring in contractors. It's all like public company data. I'm not sure how much they tell you about their contractor workforce, but that would be a lot harder to measure. But what I think is, I mean, AI is part of the larger computer revolution that we've basically grown up with. And if you look at the curvature of this, it's around the personal computer and computing that this really starts to take an exponential dive in the 90s. And actually, it is leveling out a bit, but that's because we're getting so close to just a handful of workers needed to generate a company with $1 million in revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets harder and harder to make this graph go down as you start to
Yeah.
get to, companies with whatever 150 people. But I think it's really interesting with the rise in technology over this period. It's allowed like a few different, those three different factors being like what the nature of the business is, the human efficiency in general, as well as our ability to work with people, whether it's all over the globe or just in a different capacity where it's not the standard employee-employer relationship, but we have all these people that have access to work for Uber or Slack or whatever it might be from across the globe on a freelance basis, on a part-time basis. And
Exactly.
these companies just have you really just need an executive team nowadays. And of course, you want to keep some departments in-house for quality control purposes, et cetera. But it gives companies a ton of flexibility.
Yeah.
They can make really quick decisions. They can bring on people very easily and very cheaply without having to worry about insurance, benefits, what their hours are going to be, regulations around firing and hiring, et cetera. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes in the future. You can only imagine it's going down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is really interesting. I think the other trend is we're going to see like $1 billion of revenue. We're seeing also this type of trend. I mean, if we just move away from this and just focus on the discussion now, I mean, both of our businesses are focused on working with top talent from all over the world. Myself, more so with software development, yours with the full digital ecosystem, web development, marketing, etc. And, you and I were doing websites back in high school and, started very early on working with developers from Eastern Europe, getting some experience with that. And that just wasn't, it was a whole different mindset back then. I remember it was just kind of this thing that very few people had even tried. The US is a very big country, so you can pretty much find most of the talent you need. But I can say that, once I started working with people from all over the world and really realizing just how skilled people were and the value that you can get, it was a complete game changer for me on, how much you can get done as a founder. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Absolutely. But I think there's a little more of a disconnect between these other markets, and whether it be software developers, graphic designers, people in the creative field. They are very skilled, clearly have the ability to deliver a lot of these projects, but then the issue isn't getting skilled labor, it's being able to apply that labor. Whereas when you're in the US, there's a lot more synergy between employee, employer. They understand the landscape of the market and the industry a lot more. So you don't really have a problem with this clear communication, hitting goals, having the employer, contractor definitely understanding your goals. But the trouble here is getting that high quality talent. It's actually easier to get higher quality talent overseas, but then them being coherent enough to understand the goals, understand the timelines, be able to communicate that effectively. That's where you see the difficulty over there. So I think what we're both doing is we're bridging that gap, and that's where we find value in the marketplace, is being able to leverage that lower cost but very high quality labor and actually implementing it into something that's valuable. Because I see people all the time. I think a lot of people have learned in recent years, but when outsourcing for smaller businesses to other countries first kind of started popping off, Upwork was big, Fiverr is big, and obviously they're even bigger now. But everyone just thought, oh, you just hire someone for $5 an hour or $20 an hour that's highly skilled, and then it just solves all your problems. And then a lot of people realize it actually creates a lot more problems because you need to work them into your system efficiently. So it's funny how the landscape changes from, it's not hard to find high quality talent, it's hard to apply that talent. Whereas in the US, it's really easy to integrate someone into your company, but the difficulty is getting their skill.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see it a lot when you need this professional to manage a client relationship in the US or the UK, or just simple things like communicating and problem solving, or in some cultures, letting you know if they don't know something. That's something that works really well with a lot of engineers from, Eastern Europe, is they're very good at letting you know when they don't know how to do something. In some other areas, it's a bit culturally different, where it's more that the approach that they can do this, but in reality, you would like to just know that, hey, I haven't done this before. It's probably going to take longer. it's hard to really pinpoint it, but there are challenges that you kind of need to work through. The good thing is, what I find is when you look through a lot of really skilled people, you are able to find those top 1% professionals who are great project managers. They're super proactive, great communication, great English, to where it does really work well. Yeah, so I mean that's definitely a factor in that. And then of course, you and I are both super excited about what's going on with ChatGPT and AI right now. I remember back in 2016 when I studied machine learning at the University of Washington. That's when GPUs were first getting used to do convolutional neural nets. And me and your dad, Stu, were talking about different ways that this could be used in places like Home Depot to keep track of their inventory, etc. And that was a bit of a hype cycle. We saw a lot of interest. It kind of died out. And now we're seeing more and more mature technologies with AI, more of these language models that have really kind of taken a huge step with ChatGPT. So
Yeah, so I just saw a video from an Amazon factory as of lately, and I'm not sure how widespread this has been rolled out, or if maybe it was just a marketing ploy showcasing what their future abilities are. But it seemed like the entire warehouse was 100% robots, and the entire process from the organization, obviously the packing is still human, but essentially once it gets to a certain part of this warehouse, you had about 100 different robots going around almost like Roombas, from ones that could lift multiple tons of an entire rack of inventory to other ones just moving them around so small. So I think in that way, I think we kind of saw that stuff coming. It still seemed pretty far fetched, but I think back in 2016, we were thinking about those kind of low skilled labor jobs were going to be wiped out. We saw computers at McDonald's where you go in and you just type in your order. And even things, these aren't AI, but something like self checkout, like these were massive for the industry. Funny enough, we still see people wanting to order with a human in McDonald's, and we see people wanting to check out with a human in Walmart. But let's say 20 to maybe upwards of 50% of people are now using those automated systems. But the funny thing about what's happening now with ChatGPT and a lot of this new wave of technology and artificial intelligence that I don't think anyone saw coming is it seems white collar jobs are on the chopping block before a lot of these other blue collar jobs, things like being a lawyer, copywriter, web developer, and even just programming in general. I want to get your thoughts on this. There's a lot of these jobs that we thought, oh, those are secure till the end. Like we can take out the bus drivers first, but now it looks like lawyers are at more risk than bus drivers in this current age. So I want to ask you one of your thoughts on that, but after your general thoughts, I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI coding, because I think that has been a big thing in the coding community where people are actually using ChatGPT and other softwares to help them with code. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So before we dive into that, it's a few things to kind of unwrap. But I just wanted to say one key differentiator and one challenge I had early on when I was seeing the potential of these neural networks on GPUs and really studying how they worked. It was kind of a big boys game. It's like you need to be a Google, an open AI. You need to be a nonprofit that raises a bunch of money and then builds a massive for-profit company in order to have the resources to make this model. And so still it's hard to compete on the model, but what's really cool that we're seeing now is we're seeing the value for everyday entrepreneurs. You're seeing the value. I mean, I'm using ChatGPT daily and getting value out of it. You already were seeing that for things like SEO. you're seeing it speed up the process. So for me, it's not so much, yeah, you could say these jobs are on the chopping block, but I don't think that's the right way, because really it's going to make the good professionals more effective. So yes, you probably need fewer of them, but those few are going to be so much more productive, whether it's copywriting, whether it's creating content, generating videos, writing code. It's just going to make you more productive. And so I hope that that doesn't mean that people are not pursuing these careers. I hope it means more entrepreneurs can build companies and can build things, because they can do so much more with less.
I I agree with you. I agree with you, but I think the point is, because certain people are going to be 10 times more effective in each given field, it means that 90% of the people in those fields are, quote unquote, on the chopping block, or will be in some point in the future. But I do agree
Mhm.
with you, where copywriters are going to be better, lawyers are going to be better, programmers are going, everyone is going to be so much better, though, that we can get so much done with less time. So maybe all these industries and markets are able to just expand fast enough for everybody to use this efficiency. But I think
Yeah.
if one developer can end up being as efficient as 10, you'd naturally think that that means 9 are no longer needed. So we'll see how that rolls out. But I completely agree with you that
Yeah.
we're we still need human intervention, definitely today, because I do want to talk about how a lot of these softwares are pretty base level, and I think a lot of people are giving them maybe more credit than they deserve right now. Well, they deserve a lot of credit, but the actual application
Yeah.
process, it might take longer than anticipated. Like if you really look at
Mhm.
ChatGPT, it's pretty base level. It'll give you a lot of wrong information. It'll give you some boilerplates.
Yeah.
When you really dive into it, it seems like it's a little ways out. Um,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
but
so it's it's different answers for different segments of the market. I definitely wouldn't mind, and I see a lot of value in getting rid of a lot of lawyers. I think that's just super inflated. Most companies should just be able to work with a standard contract. We should be able to automate more of basic law and not have, one of the things I hate as a founder is when you get a small team that has a lawyer and the lawyer decides to send you like a 30-page document to review. It's like, this isn't moving the business forward, guys. So, I think there's definitely space there. Copywriting, it's going to shift in a big way, because a lot of these blogs had to rely on copywriters around the world, but now maybe you can have just a small team of American editors who can really speak to the voice of the reader, but be empowered with these tools to produce the amount of content needed. So it really depends. And I would just say, for me, I still think that developers are very well protected, just in that there is so much tech that's needed. There's so many companies that need to continue to develop. And so there's always going to be so much demand for those developers. Uh, the differences with ChatGPT is you really would have a hard time writing a proper backend with ChatGPT. I mean, you could find some tutorial and you could probably get something that quote unquote worked, but you're definitely not going to be the guy I want as my lead backend engineer, because you don't have experience with all the details. What is a route? How do we build a secure backend? What are these different server errors? How should we set, these things that, yeah, you can learn them, but still someone with that domain knowledge or the low level technology knowledge of how computers work, that's still going to be really valuable, because you can spot when ChatGPT gives you the wrong answer and you can be empowered by it. So to dive into some of your stuff about ChatGPT, let's just play around with it a little bit. So write me a script to read the text from a PDF. Python. And very simple, but basically instead of having to Google for this, you can just have ChatGPT write you a solution. So one really good use case of ChatGPT for developers is what I would call scaffolding. And that's where you're having it kind of write most of the frame of what you need, and you're fine tuning it, you're making any corrections, and you're getting it into your project. But rather than wasting time, ChatGPT is incredibly good at coding because Microsoft and GitHub Copilot and the tools that run on it, it's trained on all this open source coding data. And coding is very logical. You know, you need this input to produce this output. These are the types of things that make it easier for a model to train on because it actually has to produce a certain type of output. Each node can kind of learn what these different logical functions do and be able to have a better understanding of programming. So things like scaffolding, you can really do this. It does a great job at documentation, which developers historically do a terrible job. Almost no developer you get is going to write a comment on what each piece of their code does. ChatGPT does it out of the box. It will also do it to your existing code. So if you wanted to paste some code in here, it will comment it and tell you what it does. I use it daily for coding. So the other day, I was generating a programmatic list of variables that needed to go on a page and combine with some different data. And all I had was an Excel column of all that data, but I wanted to put it into an array. So let's do this. Put the alphabet into an array. So this is a really simple example, but let's say you were an e-commerce store and you wanted to have an SEO page for every different type of shoe you had, and you had a list of shoes. So traditionally, your developer is going to have to jam that into something like this or write a script, but you can just copy and paste a list and have ChatGPT write that out. And then if you had a front end code where you wanted to display each of these shoes, you could say display that in a React component. So React's the most common front end technology. And then this will probably map that onto a React component. And so scaffolding, commenting, also it can change code into different languages. So let's say you're a really good Python engineer. Maybe that's going to be all you need. You don't have to spend as much time mastering all the syntax of a different language, the way that it's written to perform logic. You can just understand the core logic of how programming works, and then you can actually transfer that over to JavaScript or to SQL or to whatever it might be. And so really, I just think this, to me, I was talking to my co-founder Patrick about this. It just feels like the speed of learning is getting increased. Like if you're hungry and you want to learn and you want to apply yourself, you're going to be exponentially better because now you can learn faster. So those that work hard and try to learn fast are going to really have a huge advantage in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So I've been thinking a lot about how ChatGPT or some of these other similar large language model chatbot type softwares are going to compete directly with search, especially once we start getting into voice as well, like ChatGPT synced in with Siri. Yes. Or a technology similar to that. Then what's the point of Google search, at least? So as of right now, I use ChatGPT probably half of the time that I would normally use Google 1 year ago. I'm now using ChatGPT. And the only reason it's not more is because they don't have an app as uh, um, and as up to date of a data set, because they only go up through 2021. So if you want to get the score of a football game that happened last week, it's not going to be able to give that to you. So there's a lot of these things that ChatGPT is improving, but it's already half as good as Google, I would say, very roughly. So I'm curious how Google's going to respond, because they're not cavemen in this. They've been playing around with AI and similar type of technologies as ChatGPT for 5 years now, maybe more. So they're going to have to respond in a big way. But you got me thinking when you said you were talking about creating a sitemap for each site on your e-commerce store. SEO is going to be 100% different. Ads are going to be 100% different, where now you don't really care what Google puts you on their Google listings, because no one searches Google anymore. You care what ChatGPT says. If you're a restaurant, a Mediterranean restaurant in San Diego, and someone says, what are the best Mediterranean restaurants in San Diego? How do you prove yourself to ChatGPT to get on that list? Now, their search.
So, sorry for interrupting, but so to just I would say, SEO and search still matters a lot, but definitely some of those commodity things Google's going to miss out on. Definitely a lot of the coding questions, people are turning to ChatGPT because it's got so much of that data and it's giving you a good enough answer. And you can always check if the code compiles or not before you push it to your actual live application. Selfishly, obviously, I've thought about this for myself as a B2B business, and ChatGPT isn't really the solution people use for things like that, because people do like to shop around, see some different websites. You don't really make a decision on who's going to do your marketing based on just some text. But eventually, ChatGPT will probably give you a lot more information. But where's it going to get this information? It's still going to be training on web data sets. So it's still going to be important to make sure that you have a strong presence online. Make sure that you have reviews, you have client feedback, you have your different positioning and your different locations. But definitely, I could see it concentrating more of the traffic, even in B2B, towards those top players if it's always recommending those. It's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes up, but I'm not too worried about it shaking up everything in the next year, at least.
Well, that's interesting what you said about the data sets that each of these softwares is based on, because let's say ChatGPT becomes the most popular, which currently it is, obviously. SEO for ChatGPT is going to be different, wildly different than SEO on a different similar technology that has a completely different data set. Like, let's say ChatGPT, they're taking everything from Google, where there's another similar software, and they have a completely different data set. They're looking maybe only at user-generated reviews. They're only looking at all of these other things. You're going to have to, as a business, think, okay, how am I going to get in the good graces of ChatGPT? Or maybe you think that a different large language model chatbot is better. Maybe you don't even care what ChatGPT is, because you think all your customers are using this other software. So that's going to be interesting to see what data sets these technologies are using, and are we even going to know that? Because right now we kind of know. It's like the entire internet, maybe, but how do we as consumers know what the data set is? I guess we could just ask ChatGPT itself and figure this out.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a game, as the whole game already is. It's a lot of figuring it out and finding the leverage. But here's an interesting one. What is the best brand for running shoes? And somehow we are able to get good old trusty Nike at the top, Adidas, Brooks, Asics, New Balance. I think what scares people with these solutions, especially voice, is people don't really want to hear 10 options on voice when it gets there, right? And on Chat GPT, I mean, 5 options, I was thinking it would only give a couple. So what I think gives people hope on Google is people are kind of searching around and they're looking at a shop full of tons of shoes. But of course, is Chat GPT then going to bring the buying experience of showing these? It'll be really interesting.
So this got me thinking, because people have a lot of different opinions. Like, what does best mean? What does the word best mean? Does that mean it operates the best? Does that
Exactly.
mean it's the best value? Does that mean it aligns with your personal beliefs the best? So maybe in the future, similar to how Facebook would collect all this different data and then they would provide the best ads for each individual person, or the best feed based on the algorithm, maybe we'll have, whether that be in our phones or whatever, a training system training all of the AIs that our phone or devices are connected to on us as
Mhm.
individuals. Oh, is this person more
Mhm.
logically based? Is this person really like the way things look? Does this person care about, maybe they don't like Nike because they are likely or definitely using
Yeah.
sweatshops, and they would prefer a less quality product, but
Yeah.
something that is more ethically made, because that could be quote unquote best to that person. So these
Yeah.
data sets or these preferences could be completely personalized based on each individual, and then you're having another AI that is solely its sole purpose is to learn about that individual, you or your business, and then
Mhm.
basically communicate with these other AIs to make sure that you're getting the best result. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
imagine something that like that is not going to happen, so we can get further
Yeah.
personalization. Just like if I ask you a question because I respect your opinion on something, and then I ask a different one of my friends because I'm
Mhm.
trying to get their opinion, and you're going to give me a
Yeah.
different answer based on the preferences, my preferences that you already know, because you know that
Yeah.
I probably think, Nike's dumb and I should go with Adidas already, so you're not going to tell me Nike.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. It's we have so much to see. We're in such early days, so it's hard to predict. But I really think it's going to be a part of the toolbox. The way they are originally training these is, and I would like to see this more across all algorithmic tools, all feeds, everything. I would like to be able to put more input. One thing that really frustrates me, getting off Chat GPT for a second and getting more to a feed, one thing that really frustrates me with YouTube, Twitter, yes, you do have following, but I can't have a feed that's optimized for learning. So, yes, I like to watch a funny video of a fail once in a while or some epic snowboarding or whatever it might be. But I would probably like my feed to just be all the most intelligent people in the world talking about interesting things, educational stuff. I would really like a net positive feed. And right now, they don't give you that control to do that. So hopefully, we do see these algorithms open up more to customize to each user and their desires, both ChatGPT and feeds.
That is a really, really good point. And I think that's a good example of showing how hopefully these companies do this, Twitter, Instagram, etc., where you can customize your experience. You actually build a relationship with
Mhm.
AI, instead of Facebook just saying, hey, we're going to feed you this because we think it's best for us. I think with further competition in social media, it's going to be more of a collaborative process. Already, like we're seeing how you can choose just your following feed versus the normal feed. Instagram
Mhm.
doesn't allow for that, and Facebook doesn't allow
Yeah.
for that, which are the biggest. And that really drives me towards Twitter. And I don't like TikTok personally, but I think it's a great feature on TikTok as well that you can only go to your
Mhm.
following. But I fully agree, because I want an algorithm. I want the AI to be introducing new things to me, but I don't want it to only introduce things that benefit the company. AKA things that will
Exactly.
just suck my attention. And I
Yeah.
made this, I made this analogy the other day, which is just because you consume something doesn't mean it's good for your life. It's,
Hmm.
and there's all of these things that are terrible for our attention, life, that's just random things that will suck my attention in but aren't what I want. It's incredibly ridiculous logic. Whereas if you say, okay, we're going to put something in front of a human, and if they consume it, then we're going to give them more, and that's going to be beneficial. And if they don't,
Hmm.
we're not. So that's like, you know, you put candy in front of a kid and they eat it and they, okay, well, let's give them more candy. Well, at some point, someone has
Yeah.
to decide. Same with if you put drugs in front of a drug addict, now
Yeah.
they're choosing to consume those drugs. The drug
Yeah.
addict himself knows that it's not good to consume, but at some point they can't stop if you're putting it in front of their face. And so I think Meta specifically has a problem with this.
Yes,
And
definitely.
definitely in the legal sense as well, they've been called out, and Zuck is phenomenal at just making those things blow over. Shout out to him for
Hmm.
just being a phenomenal orator and getting through those. But
Hmm.
I think that's why Twitter could be a big play moving forward, because Elon actually cares about solving these problems and improving this experience. So maybe I'd like to ask you, well, if you want to touch on your thoughts there, but do you think Twitter could end up being the most popular social media in the world if things move the right direction with Elon at the head?
Yeah, I definitely think it's in the realm of possibilities for sure. I mean, Elon's the guy who's going to actually, sorry about that. He's the guy who's going to push things forward and really look at things objectively. These big companies, they just get run by these political drones who are trying to protect their little stake in the company and not do anything wrong. They're not actually building great products. That's why you see founder-led companies always outperform, because you got have people who really love the product. And what I see is these companies are making the short-term choice of optimizing views and usage versus building a product that has an even more sticky revenue stream and user base by making a product that people just love. And people would love to be able to get something positive from a product. I actually, I'm almost never on Instagram, never on TikTok. I don't keep them on my phone. I work with it for business purposes, but I'm on Twitter and I'm on YouTube. Those are the platforms I use, the social medias I use to actually consume good content. On Twitter, I consistently find really valuable pieces of information. YouTube, it's got a bit more of the junk food, so to say, but a lot of really great talks as well. So I think if these companies stepped back and they really built something that people loved, they would let people do these positive algorithm changes. It's not all about showing content that people will watch. If I see a bus, like a monster truck that's about to go off a cliff and it looks crazy, I'm going to keep watching.
Yeah.
But if that shows up on top of my feed every day, I'm going to delete the app. So, I mean, whereas
Yeah.
if I'm getting just value bombs of the most interesting articles, the best insights, founders having authentic conversations, that's where I'm going to go. And most of these platforms just get drowned out by the junk food, so to say. And
They're
so,
they're looking at their quarterly earnings. They're not looking at
yeah,
the 100-year outlook. Whereas you're 100%
yeah,
right. It's okay. Well, how are we going to make money, uh, this quarter, as opposed to how are we going to keep customers coming back for 10 years? And so that's the big differentiator. And there's really only two options. One, these companies change, or two, they get wiped out and new companies come up. That's an interesting one because I think the barrier to entry is so difficult now. Rumble has made its way up to being, I don't know how many daily active users it is, but seems to be giving YouTube a good run in that field.
mhm,
Twitter went from being, I mean, Twitter was always incredibly impactful, but I think people are kind of seeing it as it could be more of a legitimate contender. Whereas before, when you look at the economics of it, and Twitter was kind of a joke. But now it looks like it has a legitimate long-term outcome. And it's always been phenomenal, but the way it was run seemed to be a little bit off. So I think Meta, as the biggest, needs to get their shit together the most, because even as you were saying on YouTube, where it still has some junk food, YouTube is pretty easy to curate your feed. You watch 5 AI videos in a row, they're going to pump a bunch of AI. They're not going to send a monster truck crashing to you. Whereas Meta, no matter how hard you try to watch beneficial content, they're still going to throw a car crash in every once in a while, or some random captivating thing that you don't want. So it's going to be really
funny
big
to see with Elon rolling out the blue check revenue stream and all the blowback. And then just a couple days ago, Meta announces that they're going to be rolling out the same strategy. So I would definitely bet on Elon being able to figure out Twitter. I think the reality is the biggest social media platform is definitely going to be heavy on video. That's just a no-brainer to me. So he's got to get that video angle figured out. And I think, it's one of these could potentially be a super app if they combine, because you see them copying each other. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, it's all just copying the same short form content. So there's different types of content people want to consume. Maybe they want to consume a Twitter feed of text-based. Maybe they want some long form videos and short form videos. And then giving power to the users to choose how they consume those is probably a key differentiator in my view. But I want to ask you, just kind of, since we're running a bit low on time here, what are you most excited about with the new AI tools and everything that's out today from a founder's perspective and building businesses?
I think the most exciting, well, there's a collection of things that I find exciting, but I would say barrier to entry and speed are 2 of the most exciting things. So whereas before it might have been incredibly difficult to, let's say, build a website, now, and some of these things are still a little ways out. We're in beta testing, and so maybe they're not completely applicable, but we'll see them develop over the next 12 months. If you need a new landing page for your e-commerce store, there's a couple different technologies that can make you a landing page up to 90% completion in 10 seconds. And so in the past, you'd have to get some money together and hire someone, and then you'd have to project manage them. Now, and there was a change when we started outsourcing labor. We started getting access to these other markets. Okay, now that cost comes down, we're able to get high quality labor. And it's kind of a similar transition going to, instead of you being able to access more labor, we're able to access more technology that's just incredibly comprehensive. So I think barrier to entry, and that involves speed as well. Now you can pump out a website in this example in 10 seconds, or maybe you have to spend 2 hours on the back end kind of tweaking it. So you can move into these different fields. You can whether it's internally or externally, what you're actually providing to people, companies can now create themselves, create new revenue streams, create new products really quickly and really easily. So I think it's phenomenal for the little entrepreneur, where it's taking a lot of the barriers away that you would normally have trying to compete with these large companies. Even look at coding or building an app. Like, these are incredibly difficult things that now very soon you're going to be able to essentially code if you're good at prompting an AI. Now you can do basic level coding even though you don't know how to write a single line of code. So access for small time entrepreneurs is going to be great. And we're going to see emerging markets have these. We know that there's incredible smart people, hardworking people all over the world, but they're limited by access, by money. And so I think it's going to allow a lot more people to enter the playing field. And it's going to be very competitive, but I think it likely could allow smaller entrepreneurs a fair chance. Whereas it used
Mm-hmm.
to be like that, there was all these small businesses, everything got consolidated. Now we might see it kind of spread back out where a little more power to the people.
Yeah. I like to think of it as it's almost moving towards a bit of a curator economy, or, if you have that eye for the design and the messaging and the pulse of the marketing, you can do so much more. In the past, you had to spend all this time just to learn front end development or back end development or video editing or whatever it was. And now you're so much, it's so much easier to jump into these. And if you're creative and you're hungry, you can create something amazing without spending all those years just trying to figure out how video editing software works. You can just know what is going to stand out. And if you can know what is valuable and what's actually going to stand out, and you can curate the best things in the market, then you can be successful as a solopreneur, as a small team. I find it's really incredible when I look at some of the things that are going on with Stable Diffusion and some of the generated art, but also then generated videos that are being made. And it's these incredibly creative, awesome pieces that could really make a brand or make storytelling so exciting. So if you have the ability to be creative, I think you're going to be more powerful than ever. You don't have to do all of this work learning one specific tool. You can just apply that creativity across the board.
100%. Yeah, it's going to be about how we use this technology, and the people that are able to use it most efficiently are going to do the best. And one thing that's kind of concerning, I know we're kind of wrapping up, and we could probably talk about this all day, is you have these schools putting out widespread messages to the schools saying, if you use ChatGPT to write an essay, it's plagiarism or it's cheating, and you get an immediate F, something along those lines. Whereas I don't think just taking the legacy model of write a paper and we'll grade it makes sense anymore, because we have these tools. But I think the last thing we should be doing is saying, don't use the tools available. That's like teaching a math class and saying you can't use a calculator. Yeah, there's a lot of benefit to understanding your times tables and being able to not use a calculator all the time. But we should be teaching how to use these tools, not trying to teach these legacy models that are just completely outdated. We don't need to recall information from our memory anymore, or at least significantly less. We need to learn how to use these tools. And so that's the key for entrepreneurs. That's the key for kids. That's the key for society.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that. I think the speed of learning is just going through the roof. And so, we're going to continue to talk about a lot of these different tools, dive into different ones that are interesting when we have these talks together. Definitely, there's a lot that we can talk about, so there'll be more to come. But I'm really excited to just dive into this with you, see what we can find, talk about what we're doing in both of our businesses to level up our marketing, our development, copywriting, whatever it is, as well as just talking about the general market, what's going on, where we see opportunities. Super fun chatting with you today, Ted. Exciting to get going on this. Yeah,
it was awesome. We definitely need to try to do this as much as possible. So I had a good time. Learned a lot, and yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Cool, guys. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
All right, later.